Dispatcher audio. Crackling radio. Urgent voices. 911 dispatcher. 911. What's the address of your emergency? Caller. Slurred, barely coherent. It's my mom. She won't. I can't get her up, man. Something's wrong. She ain't moving. She ain't moving at all. Dispatcher. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Is she breathing? Caller. Long pause and a sound that half sob, half horror. Oh, God. Oh, God, what did I do? Line goes silent for 3 full seconds. Dispatcher. Sir? Sir, are you still there? That call dropped on a cold Tuesday night in Millhaven, a quiet river town in southern Illinois, would launch one of the most psychologically complex homicide investigations the county had ever seen. What started as a welfare check on an unresponsive woman would unravel into a story soaked in addiction, financial desperation, family violence, and the one question no detective could stop asking. Did a son just realize what his own hands had done? Act 1. The call nobody wanted to make. It was 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday when officers Dana Price and Marcus Webb responded to a welfare check at 412 Sycamore Bend Drive, a modest 2-story home set back from the road behind a rusting chain-link fence and an overgrown front yard. The call had come in fragmented, almost incomprehensible, from a man who identified himself only as Cody. He'd been drinking, that much was clear. He'd mentioned his mother. He'd mentioned she wasn't waking up. Then he'd said something that stuck with both officers the entire drive over. I think something happened. I think something real bad happened, and I can't take it back. Neither officer knew what to make of that. Maybe it was the alcohol talking. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was guilt. They found Cody Harlan sitting on the front porch steps when they pulled up, hunched over with his elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. He was 34 years old, but looked closer to 50. Stubble across a gaunt face. A half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey tipped over on the step beside him. His eyes were red and swollen. From crying, from drinking, or both. Officer Price. Sir? Are you Cody? Cody, barely lifting his head. Yeah, she's upstairs. Second door on the left. I didn't want to go back in there. Officer Webb. When did you last see her? Cody. Long pause. I don't remember everything. That answer, I don't remember everything, would become the centerpiece of one of the most contested criminal trials Millhaven County had seen in 2 decades. Officers Price and Webb entered the home with weapons drawn, moving carefully through a darkened living room cluttered with mail, empty bottles, and a large flat-screen television still playing an old country music channel on low volume. The kind of music you leave on when you live alone and don't like silence. A dog, a small terrier mix, was scratching frantically at a closed door at the top of the stairs, whining in a high, desperate pitch. When Officer Webb opened that door, she immediately keyed her radio. Officer Webb, dispatch, we got an unresponsive adult female. Give me EMS. Now. Sandra Harlan, 58 years old, was lying on her bed face up, still dressed in her work clothes, dark slacks, a pale blue blouse with a name tag still clipped to the pocket. A lamp on the nightstand cast a warm orange glow across the room. On the surface, it almost looked peaceful, except for the electrical extension cord coiled around her neck, and the bruising already beginning to darken across her jaw. Officer Webb, over radio, dispatch, I need to upgrade this to a possible homicide. We are going to need additional units. AK-9, and I need somebody out here right now. She wasn't breathing, but she was still warm. Officer Webb began CPR. Chest compressions, 30 to 2. She counted out loud, the way they trained her to, keeping her own breathing steady while her heart hammered inside her ribs. Paramedics arrived in under 6 minutes. They took over, working the scene with professional urgency, calling out vitals that weren't there. Sandra Harlan was pronounced dead at 2:51 a.m. Outside, Cody hadn't moved from the porch steps. He was staring at the ground, turning something small over and over in his hands. A sobriety chip, officers would later note. A 90-day chip from Alcoholics Anonymous. He'd earned it 8 months ago. He'd clearly fallen off long before tonight. Officer Price. Cody, I need you to come with me. Cody, is she dead? A beat. Officer Price, we're doing everything we can. I need you to come with me right now. Cody stood slowly, unsteadily, and walked toward a patrol car without another word. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He just got in the back seat and stared out the window as they drove away from his mother's house. The same house he'd lived in, on and off, for most of his adult life. Act 2, what the house said. While Cody was transported to the station, Detective Lieutenant Rachel Okafor arrived at the scene and began walking the property with a methodical calm that her colleagues had come to both admire and find slightly unnerving. Rachel Okafor had been with Millhaven County Sheriff's Department for 11 years, the last 4 as lead detective on major crimes. She had a reputation for 2 things. She was extraordinarily patient, and she almost never believed the first story she was told. She walked through Sandra's house slowly, absorbing details without yet drawing conclusions. She noted the country music still playing softly on the living room television, a detail that struck her as lived in, not staged. She noted 2 wine glasses on the kitchen counter, both rinsed. She noted a purse hanging neatly on a hook by the back door, Sandra's wallet and keys still inside. Ruling out robbery almost immediately, she noted the extension cord. It had been taken from the wall behind the bed, yanked free from a power strip, still connected to a bedside lamp and a phone charger. The cord was long, 12 feet, and had been looped around Sandra's neck with a knot that spoke of desperation, not premeditation. This wasn't a planned kill with a prepared weapon. Someone had grabbed what was closest. Someone had acted in sudden, explosive rage. That told Okafor something important. This was personal, deeply personal. She also noted something else on the nightstand. Sandra's phone screen face down. When a tech later unlocked it, the call log revealed a pattern that would shape the entire investigation. Sandra had received 14 phone calls between 8 p.m. and midnight. 11 of them were from the same number, a man named Ray Dutton, saved in her contacts simply as Ray. 3 were from Cody. The last call Sandra made was outgoing to Ray Dutton at 11:43 p.m. It lasted 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Cody called 911 at 2:17 a.m. That left an unaccounted gap of nearly 2.5 hours. Okafor, into a recorder, standing in the doorway of Sandra's bedroom. Victim is Sandra Harlan, female, 58. Cause of death appears to be ligature strangulation. Cord sourced from victim's own bedroom. No sign of forced entry. No sign of robbery. 2 rinsed wine glasses in the kitchen suggest a visitor earlier in the evening. Phone records indicate significant contact with an individual named Ray Dutton throughout the night. Son, Cody Harlan, located on premises, heavily intoxicated, currently in custody pending sobriety. Note, son made statement at scene suggesting possible foreknowledge or involvement. Quote, "I think something happened and I can't take it back." End of initial observations. Time is 3:44 a.m. She clicked off the recorder and looked once more at Sandra's face, soft, middle-aged, the kind of face that probably smiled easily. A name tag still pinned to her blouse. She'd come home from work and hadn't even had time to change. Who did this to you? Okafor thought. And why didn't anyone save you sooner? Act 3. The son who couldn't remember. By 10 a.m., Cody Harlan was sober enough to interview. He sat across from Detective Okafor and her partner, Detective James Rutledge, in a small beige room with a metal table and a security camera in the corner. He'd been given coffee, which he held with both hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. His eyes were clearer now, but deeply hollowed. The look of a man who had spent the night in a dark place and hadn't fully found his way back. Okafor, Cody, before we get into anything, do you understand you're not under arrest? You came in voluntarily. You can leave whenever you want. You don't have to talk to us if you don't want to. Cody, I know. I want to talk. I need to figure out what happened. Pause. Okafor, tell me about last night. What followed was a narrative that lurched and stuttered and circled back on itself in ways that immediately concerned both detectives. Cody described coming home around 7 p.m., going straight to the basement where he'd been sleeping and drinking through the evening. He said he could hear his mother moving around upstairs. He said he heard her on the phone. She was laughing, which was nice. She didn't laugh that much lately. He said He thought he might have heard the back door open and close around midnight, like someone had come in or left. Then came the part that stopped Okafor cold. Cody, I went upstairs. I don't know what time it was. I was pretty far gone by then, and I saw her light was on, and I wanted to check on her. We've been fighting a lot lately. I wanted to. He stops, rubs his face with both hands. Cody, I can't remember going into her room. I can't remember what I saw. The next thing I clearly remember is being on the porch and calling 911. There's a hole in the middle of the night, and I can't fill it in. Rutledge, Cody, when you said on the phone, I think something happened and I can't take it back. What did you mean by that? Cody, long silence. I don't know. I was drunk. I was scared. I think I found her and I panicked. Okafor, you found her how? You just said you can't remember going into her room. Cody opens his mouth, closes it, looks at the table. Cody, I think I'm going to need a lawyer. Interview suspended at 10:47 a.m. Act 4, The Other Man. While Cody Harlan was sleeping off the previous night's destruction, Detective Okafor had been quietly building a second thread of the investigation. The thread that led to Ray Dutton. Neighbors confirmed what phone records suggested. Sandra Harlan had been seeing Ray Dutton on and off for approximately 8 months. A man described by multiple people as charming when he wants to be, and the kind of guy you can't quite trust but can't explain why. Ray was 52, recently divorced, self-employed in some vague capacity involving property investment, a term that, in Okafor's experience, often meant a man who borrowed money more successfully than he returned it. Sandra, by contrast, was hardworking and quietly comfortable. She'd spent 22 years as a licensed practical nurse at Millhaven General Hospital. She owned her home outright, inherited from her late mother. She had savings. She had a $180,000 life insurance policy. Ray Dutton was aware of the policy. He told Detective Rutledge this himself. In the parking lot of a gas station 2 miles from the crime scene, where officers had located him at 9:15 a.m., he was pumping gas and checking his phone when a patrol car pulled in. He didn't run. He barely flinched. Rutledge, Mr. Dutton, you know Sandra Harlan? Ray, neutral, measured. Yeah, we've been seeing each other. Why? Something happened? Rutledge, when did you last see her? Ray, last night. I stopped by around 9. We had a glass of wine. I left around 11:15 maybe. Rutledge, you left her house at 11? Ray, give or take. Yeah, Rutledge. And she was fine when you left? Ray, very slight pause, she was fine. At the station, with a lawyer present, Ray's story remained largely consistent. He arrived at Sanders around 9 p.m. They had wine. They talked. He left just after 11. He claimed Sandra was alive, well, and had walked him to the back door, cell tower data, would later place his phone, and presumably Ray Dutton, moving away from Sycamore Bend Drive at 11:38 p.m., heading toward his apartment across town. It was consistent with his story. It wasn't exculpatory. But here's what Ray said next that made Detective Okafor sit up very straight. Ray, look, I've been meaning to tell you something, because I want to cooperate completely. I want you to find out what happened to Sandra. She was important to me. He adjusts in his seat. Ray, her son hated me. Cody, he made that very clear. Multiple times he told her, right in front of me, the last few months, that if she didn't stop seeing me, something bad was going to happen. He said it, those words. Something bad is going to happen. Okafor, you're saying Cody threatened her? Ray, I'm saying Cody threatened me. Through her. He couldn't stand the idea of her having somebody in her life. Couldn't stand that she was happy. And he couldn't stand, trails off, Okafor couldn't stand what, Ray? Ray, that she'd finally changed her will. About 4 months ago. Left him a much smaller share. Left the rest to her sister and a couple of charities she cared about. He found out a month later. He lost his mind about it. Okafor made a note. Underlined it twice. Motive. Act 5. A house full of history. To understand what may have happened at 412 Sycamore Bend Drive, you have to understand what already happened there. Sandra Harlan had been raising Cody alone since he was 11. But his father, Dennis Harlan, left the family without warning and settled in another state with another woman. Cody had taken it hard. Hard in the way that certain children take abandonment, not with visible grief, but with a slow interior rot that eventually colonized everything. By his mid-20s, he was drinking. By 30, he'd had 2 DUIs, a short-lived marriage that produced no children, and a lot of debt, and a growing financial dependence on his mother that neither of them fully acknowledged. Sandra worked. Sandra paid the bills. Sandra took Cody back in every time he lost a job or a lease or his footing. She loved him the way certain parents love difficult children, with a fierce, exhausting, self-destructive devotion that people on the outside often mistake for enablement. Cody's older sister, Bree Harlan Cook, now living in Memphis, described the dynamic in a phone interview with Detective Rutledge. Bree, my mother gave Cody every single thing she had to give for 30 years, and it was never enough. He would be sweet when he wanted something. The moment he felt threatened or cut off, he became somebody else. And I say that as someone who loves my brother. I grew up with him. I know who he is when he's sober, but when he drinks, she pauses. Bree, I told my mom last year, I said, Mom, you need to get him out of that house. And she said, where's he going to go? And that was it. That was always the answer. When asked whether she thought Cody was capable of hurting their mother, Bree didn't answer immediately. Bree, I think when Cody drinks, he goes somewhere that I don't recognize. And I think he scares himself when he gets there. Whether he's capable of. Long pause. I don't want to say yes. I can't make myself say yes. But I've seen him close to that line. What no one had fully grasped until now was just how close to the edge the relationship between Sandra and Cody had recently come. Text messages recovered from Sandra's phone told the story in brutal shorthand. 3 weeks before her death. Sandra, Cody, I love you, but you need to get help or you need to leave this house. I mean it this time. Cody, you don't mean it, you never mean it, Sandra. I do mean it. I changed my will. I want you to know that. Cody, what's Sandra? I'm not going to keep enabling this. I have to take care of myself. Cody, you did what? No response from Sandra. Cody, answer me, Cody. Mom, Cody. No, she hadn't answered. And 2 weeks after those messages, Sandra had reportedly told Ray Dutton she was planning to ask Cody to find alternative housing by the end of the month. She never got the chance. Act 6, the surveillance thread. On the day after Sandra's death, Detective Okafor's team canvassed a 4-block radius around Sycamore Bend Drive for any available surveillance footage. What they found didn't answer every question, but answered enough to shift the investigation's center of gravity. A neighbor's doorbell camera, positioned at the corner of Sycamore and River Road, captured footage between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. At 11:31 p.m., a figure consistent with Ray Dutton's physical description was seen leaving the rear of the property on foot, turning north, and walking toward the direction of the main road where his vehicle was parked. This closely aligned with both his stated timeline and cell tower data. At 11:58 p.m., a light appeared in Sandra's second-floor bedroom window. Not the warm orange of the bedside lamp, but a harsher overhead light, suggesting the room's ceiling fixture had been switched on. That light went off at 12:14 a.m. Cody called 911 at 2:17 a.m. Between 12:14 a.m. and 2:17 a.m., the house was dark and still. What happened in those 16 minutes of light between 11:58 and 12:14 was the question. Okafor theorized. Cody went upstairs. Something happened in that bedroom. And then, for reasons that only sobriety and guilt and fear can fully explain, he went back to the basement and drank for another 2 hours before the weight of what he'd done, or what he'd begun to suspect he'd done, became too heavy to carry alone. And then he called 911. And then, sitting on those porch steps, he looked at his 90-day sobriety chip and said words that sounded like a drunk man rambling but landed, in the cold air of that Tuesday morning, like a confession. I think something happened and I can't take it back. Act 7, the second interview. 48 hours after the first interview, Cody Harlan returned to the station, this time with a public defender, a young attorney named Kim Abra, who had asked to speak with detectives before anything resumed. She was measured, professional, clearly smart. Kim Abra, my client wants to cooperate. He's not going to make any statements about the specific events of that night, but there are things he wants you to know. Okafor were listening. What followed was less an interrogation and more a carefully controlled disclosure. Cody, visibly thinner than 2 days ago and clearly not sleeping, spoke in a flat, exhausted voice that cracked periodically and recovered. He confirmed the fight about the will. He confirmed Sandra had asked him to leave. He confirmed he'd been drinking heavily for weeks. Not a binge, it was just constant like background noise. He confirmed he'd gone upstairs that night. He would not confirm what happened next. But he said one thing unprompted that neither detective expected. Cody, I keep having this image. It won't go away. I'm standing over her bed and she's not moving. And I don't know if that's a memory or if that's my brain filling in what I was afraid I'd see. And I can't tell the difference anymore. I genuinely cannot tell what's real. Rutledge, Cody, I'm not saying that to get out of anything. I'm saying it because it's the most honest thing I've told you. I don't know what I did. I don't know if I did something. And that is the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced in my life. Kim Abra placed a hand on her client's arm. Interview concluded. Outside the room, Rutledge and Okafor stood in the hallway for a moment without speaking. Rutledge, you believe him? Okafor, I believe he believes it. Pause, which doesn't mean he's innocent. Act 8, the forensic spoke. The medical examiner's report came back 4 days after Sandra's death. Cause of death, ligature strangulation. Manner, homicide. Time of death estimated between midnight and 1 a.m., consistent with the 16-minute window captured by the neighbor's doorbell camera. The extension cord yielded fingerprints. Partial but usable. They matched Cody Harlan. His defense would argue he'd touched the cord when he found his mother, that he'd reached for in a panic, trying to loosen it. The prosecution would argue the partial prints were positioned on the cord in a way more consistent with application of force than removal. Sandra's fingernails, collected at autopsy, contained skin cells beneath them. DNA analysis matched Cody. His defense would note that they lived in the same house. Contact DNA was not conclusive. Ray Dutton's DNA was also found at the scene, on the wine glasses as expected and nowhere else. There was no DNA from any unknown third party. No evidence that anyone other than Ray Dutton and Cody Harlan had been inside that house that evening. And Ray Dutton had a cell tower, a doorbell camera, and his own apartment's entry log, placing him across town well before the estimated time of death. The investigation's final report, submitted by Detective Lieutenant Rachel Okafor, stated plainly, based on a totality of physical evidence, digital evidence, timeline reconstruction, and witness statements, the evidence supports a conclusion that Cody Harlan is responsible for the death of Sandra Harlan. The precise sequence of events and the subject's level of conscious intent during the commission of the act remain subjects of ongoing legal interpretation. That last line, ongoing legal interpretation, was doing a lot of work. Act 9, the question the jury couldn't escape. Cody Harlan was charged with first-degree murder. His defense team, led by Kim Abra, filed for a lesser charge of second-degree murder on the grounds of extreme emotional disturbance, essentially arguing that Cody, in a state of alcoholic crisis and emotional breakdown following the news about the will, had acted without premeditation, without clear intent, and possibly without conscious awareness of what he was doing. The prosecution argued that the timeline demonstrated deliberate action. The change will gave him motive. The extended period between the act and the 911 call demonstrated awareness. And his words on that porch, "I think something happened and I can't take it back," demonstrated, in their view, a man processing guilt, not confusion. The trial lasted 9 days. The jury deliberated for 2. They came back with a verdict of second-degree murder. Not the first-degree charge the prosecution sought. Not the manslaughter reduction the defense had hoped for. Second degree, acknowledging the killing was intentional but not premeditated. A recognition that something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong in that house without anyone fully planning for it to. Cody Harlan received a sentence of 28 years with the possibility of parole after serving 85% of that time. He was taken from the courtroom in handcuffs, and according to those present, he did not look surprised. He did not look relieved. He looked like a man who had been carrying something impossibly heavy for a long time and had finally been told where to set it down. Aftermath. Sandra Harlan's sister, Darlene Pryor, spoke briefly on the courthouse steps after sentencing. She said Sandra was a kind of woman who brought soup to sick neighbors and remembered everyone's birthdays and stayed at work an extra hour when a patient needed someone to talk to. She said Sandra had spent her whole life taking care of other people and had deserved, in the end, someone who took care of her. She said she hoped Cody got sober in prison. She meant it, and she was angry at herself for meaning it. Ray Dutton did not attend the trial. He moved out of Millhaven within a month of Sandra's death. Whether he attempted to claim anything from her estate is a matter still being addressed in probate court. The 90-day sobriety chip that Cody was turning over in his hands on those porch steps was entered into evidence at trial. Defense counsel had argued against its inclusion. The judge overruled. It sat on an evidence table in a clear plastic bag for 9 days, and several jurors later said it was a thing they kept coming back to, a small, round, plastic reminder of a version of Cody Harlan that had briefly almost existed. Detective Okafor closed her case file on a Thursday afternoon in early spring. Before she did, she added one final line to her personal notes, the handwritten observations she kept separate from official documentation, the ones that helped her process what the job cost. It read simply, she tried to save him his whole life. In the end, she couldn't save herself. Addiction doesn't only destroy the person in its grip, it radiates outward, silently and steadily, until people who love an addict are reshaped by it. Their boundaries worn down, their judgment clouded by love, their sense of safety quietly, dangerously eroded. Sandra Harlan didn't die because she was naive. She died because she was devoted, and because the person she was most devoted to had, by the time it mattered most, lost a part of himself that understood the difference between destroying himself and destroying her. Cody Harlan, by his own account, may never know with certainty what his hands did in the dark hours of that Tuesday morning. But a jury of his peers decided that certainty wasn't required. What was required was accountability. And in the end, it came. If you or someone you love is struggling with alcohol addiction, please reach out to the Samson National Helpline at 1-800-662-4357. It is free, confidential, and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Echoes of Felony, because every crime leaves something behind.